The day was cloudy, the sunbeams were breaking through the clouds. It all started in the First Central Hospital, the Department of Ophthalmology, with Dr. Nori, whose main character is called Mikio, came to him with his personal question. During the verification of documents, the doctor noticed that a mistake had been made in the diagnosis. So he once again decided to ask what the patient was complaining about. Basically, the guy complained about his eyes. Everything he saw was very fuzzy. When looking at any objects, a red bar appears, on which a certain percentage is written. These words caused a lot of questions from Nori. For starters, he decided to just ask what percentage the guy sees on him. Mikio replied that it was 18, but he did not yet know the exact meaning of this number, so he assumed that the doctor was 18 years old. It was a good reason to think about whether the guy was not a doctor at all. How can you call an adult man an 18-year-old boy? In Mikio's head, he assumed that this is an indicator of how much a person has left to live. 18% is not that much, and the doctor looks quite energetic. From the outside, the patient looked very strange. Now the doctor plans to carefully examine the guy's eyes, and asks him various questions to which he does not receive answers. At the moment, Mikio is thinking about these stripes over the heads of the people he sees. After a few minutes, the guy still apologized and said that he was a little distracted. He was asked to be a little more attentive, and was told that an eye examination would now begin in order to establish at least a preliminary diagnosis. Your eye is in different directions in order to see some non-standard things, but in this case the eye looked as usual. At the moment, Mikio saw this world in a completely different way. Everything was exclusively in red colors, and above the head of each person, there was a certain amount of percent next to the red stripe. In addition to this, Nori reported that they do not observe even the most frequent diseases. His eyes were completely healthy. Apparently this person simply received his sight and sees more than others. In the end, the doctor let the patient go, and said that all his diagnoses were wrong. Now it remains to figure out how to use this unusual gift to good use. Now it was not the easiest time in the yard. In the world there was one very popular military office called the Night Watch. In order to ensure the safety of the public, this department is about to open a new recruitment of candidates for patrolling the streets at night. In the 99th year of this cataclysm, a place was finally created in which to live safely. The enemies continued to retreat. All the people hoped that we would be able to win, and continue to live happily in peace. On the way home, Mikio's shoelaces came undone. When he stopped to tie them, very strange things began to happen. The whole world around him began to take on green colors. He began to imagine how and monsters that go to him. When he looked up, he saw a bright green sun. It was because of him that the world acquired green tones. After some time, many heroes appear in the field of view, who begin to fight monsters. It seems that something very serious is happening here. A terrible massacre is already planned. When Mikio looked closely at the sun, he saw that he had his own health bar. Most likely if it runs out, then the end of the world will come. Why did the guy manage to get out of this trance? Everything fell into place. The sun shone with its usual light. People around were in a hurry somewhere, and shouted at each other. In the 99th year of the cataclysm, the night patrol unit remains a reliable support for the civilian population. This world has become much better, and the cities are much safer, all thanks to these guys. People have finally managed to live a normal life, and at least sometimes not think about how difficult the situation in the world is now. Then the guy got on the bus to get home, but just in time for the trip, everything around starts to turn green. Mikio again begins to plunge into this terrible world. Something had to be done. This cannot be allowed right during the trip. In order to recover, Mikio began to turn his head very strongly in different directions, and this saved him. This happened for the second time in a day. Now you need to be very careful along the way. When the guy came home, the first thing he did was take a shower. After all the procedures, he looked at himself in the mirror and noticed a very strange pattern on his chest, while it was not clear where he came from. The guy realized that this pattern was very familiar to him. When Mikio went to the library in the middle of the night to find some comic book for himself, one of the books fell on his head. It had exactly the same pattern. Most likely at that moment after the blow, this pattern formed on the body. Because of him, Mikio felt very unpleasant pains. His body seemed to be on fire. He had to turn on very cold water and direct it towards himself to cool down a little. Today was very tiring. You need to go to bed as soon as possible. After opening the door in the bathroom, Mikio noticed in front of him some kind of very strange monster. The body was completely black, and only 2 white eyes. He stood and stared intently, did not even move or blink. The guy already knew for sure that he was in for a fun pastime, and something amazing. At that same moment, his heart ached a lot. Apparently it was his personal shadow, but just like a living one. It turns out the monster that the guy met was just his shadow, and completely belonged to him. When Mikio fully realized this, he decided to try talking to her to understand what she could do. To begin with, he simply asked her to raise her left arm. She did it, then her right leg, and she did it the same way. Mikio really liked the fact that the shadow was obedient. Now you can use it for your own selfish purposes. But he was extremely tormented by the question of why his shadow suddenly came to life. As he said it out loud, a system appeared in front of him in which you can see the characteristics of his shadow. You can also see more information about her. In general, she exists only thanks to Mikio, and has exactly the same memories, strength, can perform the simplest tasks. You need to pay attention to the fact that she does not have consciousness. Perhaps in the future this can be changed. It turns out that if there is no consciousness, then it cannot speak either. After reading the information, the guy immediately decided to check what his shadow was capable of. He gave her a pen and asked her to solve the equation. Since the shadow remembers everything that Mikio remembers, she should succeed without problems. But for some reason this did not happen, and it was not possible to solve the equation. This made the guy a little angry, because it turns out he was given false information. Is this task too difficult? It was decided to give a task much easier than the previous one, to draw a horse. She accomplished this task with ease. Mikio realized that now he can even write books and earn good money from it. Now we need to see what other possibilities he has. Mikio noticed one interesting feature in the system called Shadow Bite. This will allow you to take shadow points from other people or monsters. In order to activate the skill, you need to touch another object that has a shadow. After absorbing, Mikio will be able to strengthen himself and his shadow. Without thinking twice, the guy decided to immediately try. Initially, he did not succeed, and in general the information seemed incomplete to him, since there was not even a manual for use. After a couple of moments, a notification appears on the screen, which says that changes have occurred in Mikio's eyes. Activating this ability, the dark side of this world opens before him. World, this is the strangest place about where the guy has already visited before. Why did the guy ask his shadow to stop drawing and do some push-ups? But instead of doing push-ups for some reason, the shadow started to fall through the ground. Mikio was a little scared about it. He thought that his shadow already wanted to run up from him. So I started begging her to come back. Oddly enough, the shadow is pleased. Quickly returned, she replied that she was on the dark side, and did push-ups. For some reason she could not play sports in this world. Perhaps shadow training is better on the dark structure of the world. The guy ordered to continue push-ups. Do not pull again, dissolved in space. And he sat down at the table and continued to do his own thing. Mikio got so carried away that he fell asleep right at the table. In his sweet dream, he saw his mother's friends, fitness coach, beautiful classmates. He did not like the fact that they walked too fast. Because of this, he does not have time to stop looking at them. Then someone rang the bell, from which the guy woke up. He really did not like that his sweet dream was interrupted. I wonder who brought it there. Due to the fact that the guy did not open the door for a long time, after the calls, screams began, and then knocks. As it turns out, it was Momo's girl. She is the main character's childhood sweetheart, and constantly acts quite hot-tempered. She doesn't like to wait at all. Of course, he was pleased that she had come, but it was only early in the morning that she had forgotten here. The first thing that caught the eye of the guy was the red strip above the girl's head. It was not completely filled. He had not seen this before. The theory was admitted that it was because of these days. In the end, the guy decided to ask his girlfriend why she came so early. Momo asked him to hurry up and follow her. She would really like to know what Mikio was doing, because yesterday he told her that he was planning to start some kind of business. She wanted to know everything in detail as soon as possible. When the girl entered the apartment, the guy slammed the door behind her too hard. Momo thought it was because of her early visit. But this was done quite by accident. If you pay attention to his arm, that it was very inflated, it is impossible to achieve such a result in one night. The girl also drew attention to his hand, and was pleasantly surprised. And in general, the guy as a whole pumped up. His body was very embossed and beautiful. People have been striving for this form for years. Since Momo knows Mikio very well, she understood that the guy would rather lose his life than start training. Where did he get such muscles in just one night? The girl approached him directly and asked how he did it. The guy replied that he did only a few good exercises. Apparently the result from the shadow exercises is displayed on it. The girl lifted his t-shirt and saw as many as 8 cubes there. This suggests that the guy is deceiving her, because it is impossible to pump up so many cubes in just a few exercises. Momo said that her father was doing things like that. It's not too late to stop. The guy asked her to shut up, and said that she was not doing anything like that. Without thinking twice, the girl rings Mikio and puts him on the floor. She had a device with her to determine the body pollution index. She was simply obliged to check the guy through this tester, because he could get infected. Bad deeds, foreign objects, as well as insults are all part of the pollution. If accumulated dirt is not removed in time, this threatens with severe illness and alienation of people. The guy clearly understood that his ability appeared because of the drawing on his chest, and no tester would determine this. But suddenly some strange reaction began. The chest pattern began to radiate a bright blue color. At that moment the girl took out her gun. Does she really want to shoot? Under no circumstances should she be allowed to find out about everything. It must be prevented. The guy gathered his strength and tried to drown out the test with the power of thought. In the end, everything worked out, and on the test the indicators did not rise above the norm. Father taught Momo to be careful in everything. The gun is everything, only precautions, and a thing that can save. The guy tried to move away from this topic, said that he had made several drawings and was ready to show them. The girl was very interested and eagerly wanted to look at them. After the guys were together, Mikio finally managed to get the girl out of the apartment and stay alone. Finally it was possible to exhale. It was very close, fortunately still managed to deceive her. The guy decided to open the system to find out how his shadow is doing. At the moment, the shadow is sent to the dark side of the world to continue training. At the moment it has already become many times stronger. As it turned out, throughout the night, the shadow performed various physical activities. Because of this, at night during the training, the strength increased several times. Mikio decided to call the shadow back to talk to her. He informed that he had already felt the results of yesterday's workout, but push-ups alone would not be enough to increase the difficulty. Shadow started doing a bunch of different exercises like plank, one-handed stand on the index finger, mixed push-up, handstand, prone push-up. At that moment, Momo was standing at the door. She heard all these commands. Now she understood for sure that the guy was really training, and she came up with too much. Now you can be calm with him. Everything is fine. With a pure soul, the girl went home to read comics. This cataclysm is already 99 years old. Now is January 20th. This is the first day since the appearance of the shadow. After such strong training, the guy does not experience any pain, but becomes much stronger. Such training completely satisfies him. A person simply falls asleep and wakes up much stronger than before. On January 21st, the second day, the guy came up with a lot more exercises for the shadow that she needs to perform. The result is obvious: an incredible body, a very beautiful relief. Now the guy should be able to fight the strongest boxer, but this is far from the limit. You need to try harder. Today, Mikio's uncle, whose name is Tatsuya, came to visit. He works in the night watch, so you can't let him suspect anything. Uncle is getting old. He was left without a hand. Now, thanks to the shadow, the guy could deal with 3 such uncles with just one blow. Came on January 23rd, the shadow still worked hard, but apart from training, you need to come up with something else. In order to gain abilities, you need to try and train endurance. On January 24th, the guy loaded the shadow even more, while he himself was playing on the phone at that time. On January 25th, nothing changes. The shadow still trains hard, and the guy just sits at the computer, eats what he wants, does what he wants, walks when he wants, and generally feels just fine. On the 26th, Mikio plans to perform a feat today. He decided to do 10 push-ups. He needs to try very hard. Looking through the statistics, the guy noticed, despite hard training, there is a very slow rate of gaining shadow points. They have accumulated only 8. This is a little frustrating. Judging by the current progress, it would be quite difficult to reach 10 points for evolution. Mikio assumed that he would be able to increase the intensity of growth if he got into the dark world, so he immediately advanced there. In the dark world, the guy ended up in his room. Everything looked exactly the same as in the real world, only everything around had very dull colors. When Mikio went out into the street, he was sure that he had succeeded. It turns out that you can get to the dark side only by leaving the real world. Everything here was exactly the same as at home, only much dimmer. The guy didn't manage to walk quietly here for a long time. He immediately ran into the first monster. Initially he thought it was his shadow, but when he was attacked, everything fell into place. Mikio immediately began to run away, barely managing to dodge the monster's first attack. If you look into his eyes, it becomes immediately clear that he will not let you go just like that. Then a large number followed, so the guy was literally in the balance from the end of his life. In the end, the guy thought of activating the shadow icon in order to teleport to the real world, and thereby save himself. The landing was pretty rough. Well, it's better than being fed to a monster anyway. As it turned out, when the guy jumped into the portal, the monster managed to tear his pants in the buttocks area. He was extremely lucky. Mikio was very scared. He could not understand where this monster came from, and why he attacked him at all. Part of the exercise made him much more mobile and stronger. Thanks to this, guy managed to escape, and the monster could not harm him. Apparently, Mikio received a large dose of adrenaline, and wanted to take revenge on him. In his opinion, no one has the right to block his entrance to the dark world. Has already come, he fought the essence for the first time, but unfortunately lost. On January 29th we had a rematch. He lost again, and received a strong blow to the chest. The guy almost broke his bones. On January 30th, 3 red marks appeared on his buttocks. Although it has not been easy for the past few days, the guy has already managed to restore 6% of the red fluid. On the 31st, he asked his girlfriend to heal his wounds. Barnell Crow suggested that Mikio's had been fighting too much lately. The guy replied that Momo did not understand anything, and the scars only adorn the man, even if they are on the buttocks. The girl was not satisfied with such an answer anymore, and she pressed her hand on his sore scar, so that next time she thought about how to communicate correctly. Why did she say, if the guy is in pain now, that very soon his business will get stronger, and it will be like new? Mikio reminded that there was only a month left, and something had to be decided. Initially, Momo did not even understand what was left of 1 month. Very soon, whoever wants to, of course, people must take a combat exam in order to become part of the Knight's supervision. How can you forget about such an event when you initially planned to get there? During the years of this severe catastrophe, most industries have become less popular, including the culture and art industries. People who practice art have become the lower classes of society. No one cares about entertainment and holidays anymore. Now people have come to the fore in battles, which take first place in people's hearts. To become part of the Night Watch, you need to pass the martial arts exams, established at the state level. After passing the exam, a person's life changes dramatically. Momo replied that it wasn't interesting anymore, and she didn't want to take part in it anymore. Apparently, in fact, the girl never wanted to participate in such events. it was always imposed on her. Her true dream was to make music, this is what she wanted. Mikio was not against it, and could only support the girl. The only problem is her father. For sure he will be against it. After all, Tatsuya is a high-ranking person in the Night Watch, and she is comparable to a second-generation official who flunked his exams and became a freelancer. The girl saw off the guy to treat, and thought for a very long time about how to answer. It was clear from her face that she was very upset. Her father would definitely not agree to this. Well, what to do now? Do you really have to go all your life go against your will? So far, the girl has decided not to tell anyone about her dream, because politics has changed a lot. Now anyone can apply for the martial arts exam. The guy asked why the girl who will pass this exam 100% does not want to pass it. Momo replied that the Night Watch is constantly increasing the stranglehold, so now they take almost everyone there, and because of this case, she will definitely pass it without any problems. He will come like many others. This girl has the strongest abilities. For a start, she goes to try to fulfill her dream. On the day of the exam, a lot of different devices are used. If there is a firearm, then the guy will definitely fail him, because he does not know how to handle it at all. The most important thing is that for a failed test, he is not sent to any correctional camp. The guy also asked if the girl would allow him to use her detector, which helps to detect monsters. The girl replied that this was not necessary, because this device can only be used to detect others. There cannot be such people at the exam. If a person encounters it, then the best solution for him is to run away or call the emergency services if possible, before the person has taken the life of a special one. Mikio immediately somehow had a question: who is special? For some reason, the girl was in no hurry to give an answer to this question, and then she completely decided on the topic for me, said that she had already dealt with all the wounds of the guy. But the guy did not give up, and offered to ask questions about these special and others. Based on the fact that the guys are very interested, the girl suggested that he plans to take exams. Mikio replied that it was this year that he was required to pass the exam, only that he had no abilities at all. The guy also said that it is planned to shoot several comics about other and special ones. The girl was very delighted with this idea, and asked to tell in more detail about these comics. The original idea, to talk about a thin guy named Raiden, was constantly bullied on campus by some, but did not hold a grudge, as he had a very kind heart. Thanks to a kind teacher and aunt, he was chosen by the Night Watch unit to participate in the Super Soldier project. Raiden acquired amazing willpower, transformed beyond recognition, received an injection of a super soldier and became a powerful captain. The Night Watch unit did not plan to send him to the battlefield, going to various events to meet people from high society. After all, it was until powerful others invaded the city. Since the girl's apartment was in the same house as Mikio's, she invited him to visit her and asked her to sell the living room while she went to her father's room. The room was very comfortable, soft toys, beautiful bed. Among all this guy, I managed to notice one interesting book called The Fateful Emptiness. This is a comic book about the love of a brother and sister. Does she like it? Momo is an otter from the hands of a guy and took this comic for herself, said that her friend left it. She does not read this. Why again asked to sit here and not touch things? The girl was still the same as I was many years ago. She does not know how to defend herself at all. By the way, she liked music since childhood. She used to constantly ask Mikio to listen to music with her. The guy doesn't really like this business. To remember how it was, the guy took out a cassette and put it in a tape recorder. It was pleasant, warm memories from childhood. I wonder what the moment is. She began to like music so much. The girl ran into the room and reminded the guy how he used to hate this song. By the way, she still managed to find what Mikio asked her about. They were virtual reality goggles. If you put them on, you can get answers to all questions there. Everything was so realistic in the virtual world that at first the guy really thought that he was falling. Everything in the game was very beautiful. It was an unexplored space, full of uncertainty. It is considered the first source of the cataclysm. Others appeared right here, did very cruel things, destroyed and gradually invited the world. Also there you could see the monster with which the guy fought personally. Between our world and the world of monsters, there is a space called the Dark World. It displays a projection of the real world. As soon as the space was open, the monsters immediately entered the world through the dark, despite the fact that now the Night Watch continues to control the city. Sometimes others equally come to us. The layer of shadows is reset every 3 months, redisplays the current picture of the world. It is during this period that others penetrate our world. However, given that the layer of shadows significantly weakens the protection of the world, it is better for people below the 4th rank not to go out. The visibility range of the shadow layer is 3 to 5 meters, but with an increase in human strength, the field of view expands. There are a lot of various kinds of pollution in the shadow layer. If people stay in it for a long period of time, it is quite possible that they will become different. The guy had never known before that there were impurities in the shadow layer, which is strange because he had never experienced such discomfort when he came here before. With this guy, another of the strongest monsters was introduced. He himself was very large and had incredible strength. He literally had a connection with the sun. In order to cope with such a monster, you need to be able to fully control your powers. And then a person will have a chance to become special. The guy was delighted when he saw how special really looks. It was just amazing. He had already begun to dream how he passed the exam and became the same. But if you think about it, then the special one is different with a human body. He controls his strength, but at the same time he suffers because of it. Special people constantly struggle with pollution and alienation. And after their life ends, if there is a high probability of becoming an ordinary other. Therefore, when the special ones realize that the crisis will end soon, they try their best to use up the rest of their strength. The guy took off his glasses. He was shocked by what he saw. He really liked it. Momo couldn't understand what was happening to him at first. It was too much information. It will take a little time to digest it. Mikio also asked the girl to stretch him a little. This was your outrageous new moment too. The guy offered the girl 3 original paintings that she so dreamed of. After these words, she of course agreed. Due to the fact that Mikio is constantly studying, his neck hurts and becomes numb. Shakes the press, the girl wanted to touch it. And right at that moment Dad came into the room, who, of course, understood everything wrong. At the dinner table, you could see how angry he was, and how much he wanted to strangle Mikio. Momo did not lose hope and continued to try to calm him down. Although she herself was very scared, she had not yet been in such a situation. Dad demanded an explanation. After all, if he misunderstood, it means that his own eyes deceived him. The girl was very tired of this, and she asked the guy to say at least something. Mikio couldn't think of anything better than giving himself the punishment of drinking 3 whole glasses. He was sure he could do it. When Dad heard that the guy decided to punish himself, it meant that there was something to punish. He got up from the table and ran after him, shouting that he would tear him to pieces. The guy ran with all his might, and shouted that his foundation was so misunderstood. Mikio and Momo are good friends since childhood, but their character is very different. The guy was a bully boy, while the girl is an exemplary daughter. It was really not clear why they became so friends and loved to play together. The guy could calmly stand next to her, start writing right in front of her. This didn't bother the girl at all. She said that she wasn't afraid of it. Maybe it was all because the guy once helped her, namely, protected from 2 guys who she was bullied. The girl could be attracted by the courage of this boy. She helped him, even when he pretended to be homeless in order to raise money for some trinkets. Well, in the end, when they were won, and the guy was severely punished. This girl's dad never let anyone get too close to his daughter, and especially he watched over Mikio, because she interacted with him the most. He also loved to smoke at home, but Momo hated it, and took away his cigarettes whenever possible. When everyone had more or less calmed down, Dad once again asked what they were doing in the room. Mikio replied that they were looking for information about the other, and the special. This topic was very interesting, so Dad immediately relaxed and was ready to talk further. I decided to say what I know. He first asked if the guy knew why the government didn't let the students know about this beforehand. Of course, He didn't know anything, and was immediately taken aback. Everyone has a different heart, for some evil begins to prevail over kindness. Despair can attract people. Therefore, the government tries not to mention something bad, but only talk about positive things, which are actually very few. Not everyone has the willpower to go through all this. If a gap is formed in the heart, another can penetrate it at any moment. Therefore, various tests are carried out before the exam, and only people with appropriate physical training will be able to come into contact with the world of others. But this world is very dangerous. Even with the current medical abilities, people still get out of hand. The point of the story is that not everyone will be able to survive at all. The guy said that he understood everything, but in no case could he miss the martial arts exam this year. In addition, he already understood everything for himself a long time ago, so there is nothing to worry about. As soon as Dad wanted to contact the guy, he received a call. An urgent mission was to begin. This is with regards to the shadow layer. I needed to get out as soon as possible. Before leaving, he told the guy that it was better not to upset him, and then it would be possible to get to him in the night watch unit. Mikio asked him not to worry, did not say that they would not do anything bad with his daughter. After these words, the girl pounced on him, and they began to stretch each other's cheeks. It was already evening. The guy went to the store. In fact, he wanted to know more information, but in the end he gained only basic knowledge. Judging by the reaction of his girlfriend's father, these materials will be hidden, and most likely the guy will never release them again. Right at the time of shopping, a call came in. It was Momo. She was embarrassed to ask to buy her pads, and could only decide on this by phone. Only a month left before graduation. Now the effect of shadow training is gradually weakening. It seems that shadow training alone is not enough. You need to conduct real ones as well. Recently, the anti-other propaganda has intensified, and more people have signed up for the martial arts exam. The guy looked at the moon, and felt as if something terrible was about to begin. The most important thing now is not to drive too hard, but it is better to do training. When suddenly a portal to a parallel world forms in front of the guy, and he falls into it, there he is met by some guy, with big injuries. His red stripe was almost zero, he could hardly move. Mikio didn't know what to expect from him, so he was ready to take the fight. But after walking a few more meters, this man just fell and did not move anymore. There were also 2 small children here who needed to be saved. Then he saw a monster that was also badly injured and had very little health. This situation reminded him of how he saved his girlfriend as a child. There was no chance to make a mistake. It was necessary to take the fight, and win it in it. The man was an ordinary sentinel, on which more and more work fell. When he was a civilian, he thought that this job would bring him honor. The lookout heard screams from the portal. The man was very frightened, because it was the cries of small children. The man immediately realized that this was the work of another. But he had never seen a portal suck people in. The children were already almost covered by the portal, when suddenly the sentinel rushed to help. But after a moment, the poor man himself found himself in the black abyss of the portal. They were thrown on the other side, the children were frightened, and the sentinel was very angry. Is it all over? Is it really the end of the poor man? Because in that world his shift was over and he didn't even have weapons. Everything shone brightly with dark red rays. The sentinel immediately began to defend himself. In an incredible way, he managed to repel the attack of the monster, and he immediately disappeared. Everywhere there were others who could attack at any moment. Before them was another dangerous world. Most of all, the sentinel was frightened by small children who were so defenseless. But all he could do was send out a distress call and wait for someone to be rescued. The man did his best to calm the children and promised that as soon as everything was over he would take them home. The poor children, looking into the eyes of the sentinel, immediately calmed down. They trusted a good man and they had a hope that when everything was over, they would get home. He asked them to stay close, no matter what happens. When the sentinel was 18 years old, he passed the martial arts exam and entered the Department of Martial Arts at the university under the department. Already in his second year of study, he won first place in the exam in the battle with another. But this was not enough, because in the world of others, diligence is far from the first place. He did not believe in fate, and no matter how hard he tried, he still could not overcome the barrier and step over his limit. In the end, the man had only to move from the faculty of martial arts to the humanitarian direction, becoming ordinary civilian employees of the night watch. The sentinel walked through the streets and stumbled upon a large, scary monster. Another saw the shape of a half-man and thought that the fight would be easy. He immediately rushed at the man. The supervisor was not an easy nut to crack. He did not give up and gave a strong rebuff. Sentinel felt like a familiar sense of strength and fearlessness began to return. But the body was slower than the mind. The man could not accurately calculate his strength. He did not give up, although the battle was fierce. The body became heavier. It seemed to him as if 1,000 needles were piercing him. He couldn't run anymore. He needed to come up with something urgently. Gathering all his last strength into a fist, he did the unbelievable. It was his shadow power, the power that came from within. The sentinel ruthlessly knocked down the monster. The pollution continued to grow whenever the monster used its skills. Unfortunately, the man was a low-qualified person. People like him could not reuse their abilities. But the sentinel understood that if he did not take the risk now, then his future might not be. The fight went on, too much was at stake. The monster was merciless, he had no feelings, unlike a person. The man realized that they had too much difference in talents, and it would not work to defeat the monster, but he did not intend to give up. The only thing he could do was just play for time, for the sake of little children. The kids watched everything that happened. There was only the belief that other members of the night watch would come. In one fight he became a hero. A hero not only for children but also for himself. Because he finally got over himself. But fate had other plans. It seems that the end of the story of his life that has not yet begun has come. When he was 15 years old, his entire family lost their lives because of others. Probably for this reason, at the age of 18, a man decided to take a test in martial arts. And at the age of 20 he was expelled from the second course. At 21, he entered the Night Watch unit as a civilian and 4 years have passed since then. Perhaps such was his life, which for this world was considered the norm. Deprivation of life in this world was the norm. On his last breath, the sentinel had to do something. It would seem that there are no forces anymore, but Vera remained, which made it possible to play with another in the second round. Even if this round will be the last in his life. This fight could be remembered in history because it was between the strongest monster and an ordinary civilian. The sentinel pulled out all his insides for the sake of this battle, for the sake of small children who are waiting for salvation and a brighter future. After a long time came the decisive blow. Unfortunately, this blow was the last in favor of the monster. The sentinel saw nothing. He blamed himself for everything that was happening and considered himself a real weakling. Even with the help of pills, he could not win. Mikio was walking down the street and saw terrible events. He immediately noticed a man from the night watch, but the voice was too young, the manner of speech was not at all like that. The lookout thought Mikio was one of the special ones. Mikio told the man to rest and that he could rely on him. After all, the entrance and exit from the dark side is cruelly controlled and a random person cannot get here. Unless he's the owner of the mysterious inhabitants of the dark side. The sentinel, seeing the picture of the blow, immediately thought that Mikio was a weakling. Another had only 23%. Victory was close at hand. Mikio approached the battle with humor and shouted at the monster that now he was his opponent and not a man. The fight was strong. Everything around was in the fires of talents. No matter how someone else tried to get into Mikio, nothing came of it. Everything was useless, because Mikio had already figured out the scheme of the monster's attacks. Another was badly wounded, so speed and strength left much to be desired. Mikio had the advantage. The sentinel could not understand in any way how in this battle, in an inexplicable way, an unknown boy defeats his opponent. Mikio already met with another a few days ago. He knew all his actions, therefore he was sure of his victory. Another tried to make the same attack as last time, and that was his mistake. The main character saw two small children in the corner, and he could not allow the monster to attack the poor things. If the Marines were alone, then he could just escape from the dark side and return home to lick his wounds. But then the children could get hurt. But another has only 20% left, then what's the point of being afraid of him? And it was decided to bring the matter to an end. The man told Mikio that the monster had a serious injury in his right rib and shouted to attack there. The guy quickly reacted and immediately rushed to another. With his sharp bottle, he managed to hit the right place, and the monster immediately began to run away. As it turned out, I saw easier prey. It was those little kids. The guys immediately rushed to help. After all, they could not allow the little ones to suffer. The kid pressed the girl into his arms so that she would not see a terrible monster there. He asked him to stop, but the mouth of another was already too close. Mikio rushed to help, and of course the sentinel quickly began to help him. Another had only 15% left, and had no chance against two. In an attempt to take easier prey, the monster is doomed. Mikio delivered strong and terrible blows. The monster was losing its powers with each one of them. The terrible other was defeated. This fight seemed to last forever. Everyone was exhausted and scared. Mikio fell down and began to see terrible events. Was it really a gathering place? But then why did everything change so much? He was surrounded by a large number of others. They were all ready to attack. The sun was gone, the dark side enveloped the world, hope was lost. Someone was dancing at the feast, and someone was screaming in pain. Someone silently fights and dies. Some people understand, and some don't. The sentinel tried to raise Mikio with a cry, worried that he would never wake up again. Got up, it looks like he just had a dream. After defeating another, the memories are cut off. The guy saw that the man was in a very serious condition. He had only 10% left. He could not even stand on his feet and lost a lot of red liquid. The two of them sat down near the wall and started talking. The sentinel didn't recognize Mikio even though they actually live in the same house. The man was very surprised. In fact, he just didn't see well. Therefore, in this state, he really can't learn or remember much. The guy thought that the main character was a member of the Night Watch because he had extraordinary strength. The lookouts didn't lose their enthusiasm. He was really happy to be alive. He joked various jokes about how the regular soy sauce guy saved them from being killed. Mikio was shocked that even in this state he could still laugh. The people of the Night Watch are really amazing. They just started talking about life. Who is studying at which university and what course? It would seem that nothing happened. Mikio was glad that the sentinel did not recognize him, because it is better for him not to know the truth. But the sentinel did not want to stop his questions, and this began to worry him very much, because the secret might become clear. The man said that he had always admired martial arts. It was always very exciting. Unfortunately, from professional fighters he had very low qualifications, and the attack power of the attack was much weaker. He considered himself hopeless. Even farsightedness, which it would seem should increase combat effectiveness, does not save at all. Mikio began to worry that a man might lose his strength from long conversations. The sentinel only wanted to talk to someone, because it's not every day that a civilian gets the opportunity to fight with another. But in any case, he was terribly weak. So weak that he could not even withstand a wave of pollution. Did the sentinel regret everything? But since he chose the direction of the humanities, how could a civilian get to the dark side? But the man did not regret anything. It was his choice. He was a civilian who went to work every day, chatted with girls, worked on the night watch. Was it a bad life? It was he who transferred to this specialty because he was kicked out of martial arts. It would seem that everything is already good in his life, but in fact he did not like anything. Mikio tried to support him as best he could, because otherwise it would become even harder. The sentinels said that they had already sent a signal for help a long time ago, and most likely the rescuers would arrive soon. The sentinel did not want to let the guy go and asked him not to walk around the district because you can stumble upon another different one. The man asked to wait together for the rescuers and while there is time to chat a little more about life. But Mikio wasn't in the mood for talking and wanted to take a break from it. In his head was only that it was time to leave as soon as possible. The guard seemed to be in a state of shock. He couldn't stop talking about how he fought the monster and how brave he was. The man asked the guy when he went to university again to take something to the director of the Specialty of Extraordinary Technology. It can be said that his teachings did not particularly bring results, and even another of the first rank can be extremely strong. Mikio each time tried to gently hint that there was no point in talking now. But the sentinels had been carrying everything in themselves for too long and wanted to find a person with whom they could talk. The man continued to recall his past life, and the guy, in turn, could only support him. It looks like the guys noticed how the portal opens. Most likely the night watch came to the rescue. Mikio was glad that the man and children would finally be helped, and of course he would be able to get rid of this long chatter. Mikio picked up his grocery bag and confidently started to leave. The sentinel thought that the guy would go take it off, but it looks like he had other plans. They wished each other good luck and a safe journey, and ended the meeting of a guy with a secret and an ordinary night watchman with a big and sad story of his life. 3 sentinels rushed to help. They immediately reported the situation. A severely wounded man with 2 children was found. Suddenly, something made Mikio turn around and he noticed how the man's vital signs were dropping. The night watchman could not do anything and no one understood what was the reason. Why the man could not help with modern technology. Unfortunately, the man still went to another world, and the guy who wanted to escape as soon as possible did not manage to run to his aid. In an unexpected way, the guy ended up on the street of an ordinary city, and he was surrounded by completely ordinary people. They stood at a loss what this guy was doing, or maybe he was some kind of actor, for his clothes are stained with a red liquid. But the special ones must remember, they must remember everything that was and is happening. You can't give up even at the last minute of your life, when you realize that the chances of survival are slim. Mikio heard the man's story about the fact that after taking the pill, the risks of taking it are great, because the chances of further life are significantly reduced. It is for this reason that this pill must be taken with all care and caution. The night watchman must remember all the fallen and boldly move forward until all others are destroyed. They are destined for a big mission to monitor the earth and sky, patrol day and night, think only about a happy future. Ordinary mortals have to observe inexplicable things and, moreover, confront them. After all, they are guardians. Mikio entered the elevator and went upstairs. He was tormented by thoughts of how this brother could go to another world. He constantly joked and talked so much. Or maybe he knew that he was falling asleep and just wanted to chat in the end. He was a hero, and in the end he would not receive any flowers, applause, and even his name was not known. And no matter how ordinary this man was, Mikio would never be able to forget him. The guy was already walking with difficulty. He had to wash himself and go to bed as soon as possible. He thought he only had 20% left, but luckily there was still half. Thoughts continued to tear him apart. How could that man fall asleep after all? He had another 10%. Why no one could help him? And then he realized an important truth, that it is not enough to train only his body, because willpower is no less important. Behind him there was a cry about where the eggs were. Momo was surprised where was the guy for so long. It felt like he was going to the chicken coop looking for those eggs. But the guy, without thinking twice, skillfully got out. After all, it was the new year the day before, and the queues in the shops are simply huge. And then the confused guy realized that how did the girl even end up at his house? Where does she get the keys from? He even threw her a claim about the violation of personal space. The girl ran up to Mikio and in response reproached him for not preparing food himself and not even ordering it. So my uncle asked me to take care of him. Momo noticed the untidy look of the guy and thought that he had a fight with someone. Mikio didn't want to answer the questions and started chasing her to his house because her uncle would misunderstand everything again. The girl did not lose her enthusiasm and, of course, was not going anywhere. Even opposite, she clutched at the guy with her hands and tried to turn him around to face her. The girl was shocked at how badly Mikio was hurt. No matter how the guy tried to get out of it, nothing came of it. Momo was determined to find out the truth. Mikio came up with a story about how he was attacked and robbed on the way home, but then he caught up with the insolent man and took revenge on him. His revenge was so strong Kalabak that when the police arrived it was difficult for the attackers to recognize even a person. And then the guy was unstoppable. He kept talking about the fact that she could not even imagine how good his reaction was. Left uppercut, then a right combo, and up and down is the least he can do. When suddenly only one touch of her hand made him become. She gazed into his eyes. Mikio was afraid that the girl would never believe such nonsense. But it seemed she was only concerned about the well-being of the guy. She continued to gently envelop him with her gaze. Mikio just made it clear that he was very tired and he needed to go to bed as soon as possible. Momo was very angry at the moment, and was already on her uncle's way to tell about what had happened as soon as possible. Mikio, of course, was in a hurry to stop her as soon as possible. But she was too angry at the situation. And all the guy's words that he just stood up for his honor had no meaning. As suddenly he fell because he was too weak. The girl was very frightened and immediately rushed to him. She rather wanted to send him to the hospital. But the guy was against it. He explained this by the fact that he would be better at home and there were all the necessary medicines. Momo began to treat the guy. And she was no longer gentle. She rewound him from head to toe. It seemed that just a little bit more, and he himself would turn into a mummy. The girl took revenge on him, and the guy in response shouted that he would never do this again. Mikio, at his own peril and risk, shouted out the phrase that fights are inherent in nature in guys. To which Momo almost started a fight herself. Momo packed up and was ready to go home. But of course Mikio couldn't live without his stupid jokes, and invited the girl to stay together for the night. Because the bed was large and the two of them fit perfectly there. The girl was already used to Mikio's humor, so she made a face and slammed it behind her. The guy was on his own again. And all these thoughts about a brother from the night watch began to absorb him. He remembered all the stories the man had told about the university and the rest of his life. Mikio was thrown off the couch again from the realization that he didn't even know the name of this beautiful hero. But what kind of monster was it? And the answer is very simple. His name was a wandering spirit. It was another from the lower abyss, belongs to the shadow and the dark beginning. He turned against the guys all his hidden attacks. As Mikio already understood earlier, most of all, you need to take care of your back. The guy wondered if there might be a defeated other displayed somewhere, or he would be consumed by the bite of the shadow before victory registered. Mikio got a new skill. It was a wicked blow. It happens with the help of a hidden attack from a shadow that the enemy cannot see. First attack deals massive damage. Mikio began to study himself and found that his shadow points are 14 out of 14, and from abilities he has Shadow Bite, Shadow Pupil, Shadow Shape. The guy was a stalker who was born to fight with others. But in any case there were still many questions. In the shadow form section, his next stats were that his breath would be able to blend perfectly with the shadows that others wouldn't be able to see him, and much more. But most of all the guy was struck by the fourth point. It was about the fact that in case of serious injuries, the volume of his fluid would be delayed, which would slow down the approach to leaving for another world. He decided to summon his shadow in order to test his abilities. And immediately, thanks to one touch, he became this shadow. It was his new ability to take shape. Mikio has gained incredible speed as well as super strength. No matter how he tried to hurt himself, nothing came of it. He was simply invincible. The shape of the shadow was just something. Did not catch the eye and at the same time justified itself well. Everything turned out in the best way. The only thing was that the neighbors from above were already tired. They could not calm down. The shadow, although not striking, but at the same time justifies itself well, the shape is just something Mikio was extremely pleased with. While browsing the system, the guy noticed that now you can open something new. Without thinking twice, he decided to do it. Further, he was notified that he had part of the ability of this skill, but the official, full mastery of them had not yet been obtained. After the full acquisition, no one will have Dan's ability anymore, but still there are risks. Now you need to decide whether to try it or not. This really made the guy think. The system marked the word risks in red. Maybe it's better to refuse, but on the other hand, risks can lead to great opportunities. As a result, the guy just stared at the answer yes, and the system itself decided for him, after which the immersion process began, although the guy was not sure whether he wanted it or not. This knowledge was called risk. Here you need to constantly take risks. If this is not done, then the performer may lose his life. Here any attack causes damage, therefore it is possible all the time. But there are some notes. The first, guns, bows, poisons and other foreign objects will not reproduce any effect. The second, as a man from the shadows, the guy should behave secretly. The higher the reputation, the more fruitful the result will be. And the third, in case of failure, there will be no salvation. Task looked very interesting, and very dangerous. The most interesting thing was that the damage is done even to God. After activating the shadow form, the guy's abilities will be greatly increased, and the need for a certain balance of the red liquid volume will be reduced. When the volume of the victim's red liquid reaches a certain limit, the strip above her head will become scarlet, and the gradual deprivation of the victim's life can be observed. When attacking, you can activate various interesting skills, which will depend on the level of the red liquid, strength, ability, and other factors of both sides. Now the guy understood at what point the skills are activated. He already had the opportunity to use them when he defeated another, but he was afraid to do it. Mikio imagined himself invincible, and was ready to start the task. But first I decided to tie bandages, in which almost the entire body was wrapped. Initially, there were a lot of wounds on his body, but now there is nothing. Is it really that everything passed so quickly? It's just incredible. By the way, even the deepest wound has disappeared. Medicines cannot act so quickly. Some kind of magic is here. Healed so quickly, it was possible because the guy activated the shadow form. The power of recovery is simply amazing. Meanwhile, the guys ate in some place. I'm in the gym. Yesterday's photo of Mikio. Yesterday the guy told me that he met some merchant, and had a fight with him, but this man still had a knife with him, for cutting watermelons. The guys thought that he was injured and some of them wanted to visit him. Momo told them to believe him less. In her opinion, she just got up behind him like a dog and bit him. Because of this, now the guys have a negative impression about Mikio. For them to recover is just an ordinary deceiver. In the end, to confirm her words, the girl decided to bring her friends to the guy right in the house. They are very surprised that Momo has the key to his house, and they try to get out even without knocking. The girl replied that this key was given to her by Tatsuya. The girl entered the door, and said that she came to visit the guy with her friends. At that moment he was in his room, half naked, in severe pain. Somehow, he accidentally opened a wound to himself, and did not know what to do now. The guys came very on time. It's far from the fact that Mikio could handle it alone. He started the bandages too early, and the wound opened. Now the guys realized that he really suffered, and the fault of this was definitely not some dogs, a real rival. They were also shocked by how much the guy pumped up. Now it's clear why he attacked the merchant. With such force you can fight anyone. Momo quickly grabbed her head and told them to go to the living room so they wouldn't interfere. In fact, they were very worried about Mikio and wished him a speedy recovery.